The final step in healing, and I've never said this out loud, the final step in healing is helping other people heal. That's it. It is the final step. And if you don't do that, you're depriving yourself of healing. And if you don't do that, you're depriving the world of the giftedness that you inherently have inside you.
It's so damn simple what you just said, yet so difficult for many people to get to.
Your greatest gift lies right next to your deepest pain.
The gift you get when you help someone else that nothing else can trump it.
Welcome to the Sinclair podcast, where we share real-world experiences, wisdom, and the honest struggles of entrepreneurs to help you navigate and scale your business with confidence.
Philip McKernan, you make me smile. I'm very excited to, as I mentioned earlier, get you on the hot seat today and just have the time and I guess more importantly, share you with my world and my network. I feel like I've maybe, not on purpose, but hidden you, and I'm really, really excited for your story to get out to a lot of people today.
Thank you. I was excited until you mentioned hot seat, and then I'm thinking, oh shit, what have I signed up for?
Yeah, we're gonna find out. I'll see if I can hold your feet to the fire for the full hour. So, if it's all right, though, I want to start with a story because I think it gives some context to how our relationship started. And I laughed just thinking I was in the shower this morning, literally giggling to myself. But so it was 2016. Our form group through EO at the time, there was I think 8 of us, and we had done about 4 years in a row of a similar retreat facilitator. So once a year we go away 3, 4, 5 days and work on the strategy and the business and peel back some of the layers, and your name came up from a couple different form people, and they said, you got to talk to Philip. He's great. He's different, but it's worth a call. So I'll never forget. Eric Simmons and I jump on the call with you, and in about 4 minutes, you basically disqualified us, saying like, "Listen, guys, it sounds like it may not be a fit. It's I'm not for everyone." And I think we had sticker shock of the price. You had no agenda or plan for what we were going to be, which we were obsessed with. Like, what happens, before, during, and after. And you disqualified us. And we kind of got on the phone after and said, like, he can't do that. And sales tactic or not, it was brilliant because in a matter of, I think, 48 hours, we had confirmed with the group, like, yeah, we're going to invest in getting you down to Mexico. And it was worth 10 times that, I'll say. But the second piece of this was, again, with a group that's used to so much planning and working on digging apart, whether it's personally, professionally, family. We're expecting all this homework from you before Mexico, and you give us nothing. You say, well, we'll probably meet around 10 o'clock the second day. We're like, what do you mean, no agenda and no homework, and we're not starting at 8 and going to grind out 12-hour days? And it was brilliant. In 2 hours, you went around the room of the 8 of us, and I'll say, undressed us, but in a loving, courageous way, you were able to peel back layers in about 15 to 30 minutes of each one of us of stuff that took us 4 years together to not even get to. And I just said, holy shit, this guy's got something that I've never seen before. And at dinner that night, I remember sitting beside you, you're on my right. I'm like, so how long does it take you to do that, Philip? How'd you learn that? And you said, it just, again, in a just a beautiful way. It's like it's a gift. It's something that comes to me. It's not something I learned, and I think that was just from that moment. I'm like, I gotta spend more time with this guy. So it was an incredible experience. I loved it, and I had to tell the story to give some context. So you couldn't get ready.
If I may, I want to comment on 2 things. First of all, I don't remember the very, very first phone call, but I vaguely remember it. For what it's worth, there wasn't a sales strategy or tactic at all. And I don't remember that nuance. But I will tell you one thing, because I don't think it's breaking any confidence whatsoever, because obviously my work is very confidential. But I do remember receiving various different communications in advance of this retreat in Mexico from different members of the forum. And I remember getting down to this beautiful resort. It was relatively late. Everyone was sitting around a table. I walked in on the very first night before we started the work. And I walked in and I decided I was going to have one drink and then I was going to leave you guys to it. So I walk up to the table, I sit down, I'm having my beer, and one of the guys, I don't remember which, and even if I did, I wouldn't mention, he says, but why don't we just kind of start the conversation now and just kind of like get it going and whatever, right? And I remember thinking to myself and saying out loud, I said, guys, no, there's a few drinks and it's probably not the environment. And everyone's just raring to go. And as I'm standing up, I'm walking away and someone said, but before I share that, I had received this in various different ways, at the bottom of the email, signing off. By the way, you can go as deep as you want. Like, we're okay with that. By the way, we're looking to go in super deep, etc. We're used to that. And as I'm walking away from the table, this is my memory. One of the guys says, listen, see you in the morning. I'm looking forward. Like, by the way, we're willing and ready, and we're used to going super deep. And I turned, I walked back to the table, I stood and I looked over and I looked at everyone and said, so you all keep telling me. And with that, I remember some of the faces just going kind of like this. And I turned and I walked out the door. And I suppose it's no reflection on the group, is that I do believe there's a place to go deep in life. And I do have a saying that the deeper you go, the higher you fly, that the deeper you know yourself, the deeper you understand your origin story, the deeper you understand the emotional landscape and your self-awareness, the more opportunity there is to soar in this world, as corny and as cliche as the word soar might come across. And despite our greatest intentions, sometimes we surround ourselves with people that we do go deep with, but perhaps there's not as much depth because we've normalized whatever level we're at. And I'd say that's the same for every relationship in the world, including my own relationships with my wife. I would sit here and go, yeah, it's super deep. But is there another layer and level to that? Of course there is. There has to be. Otherwise, what's the point?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I think that was the Pandora's box for, I think, a few of us that continued to hang around and join pretty much anything you had on at that time. So we'll talk about Ireland later and the impact that had on my life, and I know many others. But I want to start with, tell me, you're from Ireland, obviously we could tell, but what was it like growing up for you in Ireland?
In many ways, it was magical, and I suppose no different than anybody in any part of the world. We often take it for granted. And I had my own challenges, and from an educational standpoint, and some bullying and different nuances. So I had two lives going on, actually, now that I'm sitting here thinking about this. I really lived two lives. One life was in Dublin, and I went to a private school that my parents really couldn't afford, but they sacrificed vacations and holidays and different things like that to allow us to go to school in what they thought was a better school for us. So I went to this private school, and I was, exposed to people from all over the globe, people who had lots of money and people who didn't have a lot of money, like ourselves, etc. And I remember just looking back, I remember the weight and the heaviness of trying to be something I wasn't. And there was a lot of that going on in my life, trying to fit in, trying to be something I wasn't. A lot of pretending. It was like I lived in Hollywood and I was an actor. That's what it felt like. And then I would come west to a place called County Clare, which you now know. And I would come to a little village in the middle of nowhere called Cranny. And this little village that most people have never heard of, even people that live in Ireland. And my parents owned this tiny little cottage with no running water, no electricity. And we'd come down and there was no technology. And they couldn't afford to do anything with it at the beginning. But as we moved through life, they chose not to upgrade it a lot other than the basics. And it was this place that I could just be absolutely 100% Philip McKernan. And the locals treated me like a human. They didn't give a shit what watch I wore, what shoes I was wearing. They didn't care about anything other than they saw me and they wanted to know, did I see them? And that was it. They didn't use that language, but they would sit. And it was, I don't talk a lot about it, but it was this very sacred time. And I would get back in the car, and I'm not talking about when I was 4 or 5. I'm talking about, 13, 14, 15. I would get back in the car after these magical experiences of just pure simplicity and beauty and love. And I was in touch with the land, and I would drive back across these shitty roads back to Dublin, and I would pretty much cry all the way home because I was going back to Hollywood, and I was going back to the place and I'm not blaming Dublin. I'm not trying to be the victim and say, oh, it's Dublin and it's the city and it was 100% my decision to choose to. And as every 10 or 20 or 50 or 100 kilometers moved, I felt like I was putting on an extra mask that I had taken off when I was in Clare. People could see me and accepted me, and I was putting on these masks to go back and be the guy. And that's kind of, and the last thing I'll say is, in the culture of Ireland, there's so much mystique and story and music and everything else. So I was surrounded by this beauty and music that I didn't appreciate at the time. But looking back, I think it helped me. It shaped me kind of internally, if you like. And it gave me a great sense of what this magical, beautiful, tiny little Ireland represents and what it can be in the future.
It's beautiful. And knowing the retreat experience you have and what you built for others there, I can only imagine that was a huge influence on you at that time to create space. And I mean, Ireland is absolutely magical. Yeah,
100%. Yeah, it's formed so much of the work I've done and so much of the work I've yet to do. And I've in some ways I feel I've done a lot. In other ways I feel like I'm just getting started.
You mentioned a couple times, and if you don't mind me sharing, but you grew up and you were dyslexic and you had a really hard time in school. How did that impact some of those, really high pressure and those hard years? I mean, for anyone in school, it's difficult.
Yeah, for me, I felt, this layer of stupidity and worthlessness that because I couldn't do what it appeared everyone could do just, so naturally. And it was just so easy for everyone around me. And I think that coupled with a number of teachers who went kind of out of their way to point out how stupid I was and how lazy I was and how much I would amount to nothing. And when you're in those very informative years, you start to kind of not just listen, but you start to fundamentally believe that what they're telling you is true. So it was a very, very difficult period for me in many ways. And I think my strategy was to continue to act even deeper. So I would put on a smile. I would put on a sense of confidence, but inside I was dying. I just wanted to be able to. I just wanted to die and just wither up and just go away. And to me, school was a prison. And I know if my dad was listening to this or my mom was listening to this today or tomorrow and in the future, they'd probably be devastated to hear, number one, that was my experience after them putting me in this amazing school. But that is my truth. And I'm not going to feel guilty for sharing, what was actually going on. And two, maybe for me not articulating to them the pain that I was in. But I didn't feel that I could share that. And that's not on them. That's on me and maybe partially on them. But I chose to hide that pain because I grew up in a society and a family and a unit that we didn't really talk about that. We talked about, like many people in the world, we talked about what's positive. We talked about the neighbors. We talked about the weather. We had a lot of competition, but we didn't go deep emotionally. We didn't open up, and there wasn't that space. So that was alien to me. And it's no coincidence that I now find myself later in life that this is a lot of the work I do, which is going deep. So it's almost providing the space that I never had, essentially, is what we often do when you get in touch with that giftedness that we all, I believe, inherently have inside of us.
You have this incredible sense of humor that you can take a room like this in a different direction in a somber moment, a difficult, and just change to move forward. You're just hilarious. But when did you develop that, and was that sort of something that you hid behind in some of those years, either back in school or into employment and a career?
Yeah. Oh yeah, I hid behind humor. Humor was a defense mechanism, like the Great Wall of China. It was my way of, I became the entertainer. And, I would go to parties and people would almost like not literally stand in a circle, but they'd kind of look at me and go, come on, do something, like do shit.
McKernan, let's go.
Yeah, it was either one, I'd do stupid shit and it was kind of funny or not funny, or two is I'd do stupid shit that just simply wasn't funny and was outrageous. And I mean, I can't think of anything off my top of my head, but and I used alcohol to access that humor and to let go and to let go and to let go. And I do believe that there's a genuine sense of humor there that I have, that I've become a lot more, I've just developed a more of a pleasant relationship with. And my wife just says, you are hilarious, but sometimes your work gets a little serious. And it is, because life, I don't mean life is serious or life needs to be serious, but there's a serious nature around life. And I think people sometimes don't take life seriously enough to both have humor and to have growth and to have courage and so on and so forth. But for what it's worth, I definitely hid behind humor. And then I left humor behind and I felt it was very fake. I remember years ago when I started to do speeches, which was never part of any plan. And I'd be on stage and I would open up with a joke, and my wife kept saying, no, it's not a good idea.
Don't do it.
When you try to be funny, you're just not funny. And I found myself in certain audiences in certain parts of the world, and I won't mention where because it might sound like I'm having a go at them, but I would crack a joke and no one would laugh. And then I go, I worked on that joke for ages. That was actually a joke, and I think it's funny. And then people would laugh, and I go, what is wrong with you? I mean, you're laughing at my comment about the joke rather than the joke itself. And I remember coming back to Ireland one Christmas and having a beer with my one of my closest friends, Gary, that I went to school with. And he said, you're on stage and you're speaking. I saw it on Facebook. And I said, yeah. And he goes, like, what's it like? Like you standing on stage. Like, he believes in me, but he was shocked at the same time. Not as shocked as I was, of course. And I go, it's weird because, in North America, sometimes the sense of humor is just, it's not that, it's different. They don't get me, And he goes, sorry, Philip, it's just, I know you 20-something years. It's nothing to do with North America. You're just not fucking funny. That's it. And I went, everyone needs a good friend that can just remind you of how human and fragile and actually the truth at the same time.
Take you down a couple notches when you're it's getting a little big. Oh, that's beautiful. So take me to when you started this work. I mean, you're a speaker, you're an author, and a lot of your work is coaching either in groups or, sometimes individuals, but why that? And when did you have this sort of vision around doing this, or did you fall into it?
Yeah, I'd love to tell you the story that I think some people might expect or might be inspired by. I had this vision when I was 7, and I was teaching, and I was on a stage, and I had this castle, and it was all amazing, and I'd written these books, and it would be complete bullshit. It'd be so insincere,
everyone. Yeah.
But I guess there's so many angles to this story. Something that I've rarely ever shared, but I was reminded of this about 5 years ago by a lady who lives in America that I only see every kind of 10 years. And she goes, so you're not a priest? And I went, excuse me? She said, you're not a priest? And I went, no. And she goes, oh, right, because that's what you wanted to be. And I went, what are you talking about? And I have no recollection of it, which is maybe very obvious because like lots of humans, I try to forget the shit that I want to forget.
Yeah, exactly.
And she said, when you were young, very young, and I asked you one day what you want to be, and I looked at her and I said, I wanted to be a priest. And I had no recollection, but it was one of those things that, like the story you shared at the beginning, I didn't recall that particular phone call with you, looking to engage me for that retreat. But when the story is shared, you feel it's very familiar. You can imagine it happening. You can feel into it. And I got embarrassed and I got kind of red, which I don't normally do. And I went, God, yeah, I think you're right. She says, no, I know I'm right. She says, I have amazing memory. And I thought about that. And was it the religious aspect? Was it, pleasing my parents who were not churchgoers? So it wasn't that. And was it the standing on stage? No, but I think it was the beginnings, the whisperings of maybe wanting to influence people, maybe wanting to do good, maybe wanting to, what my perception of a priest was at the time, caring for people. And the other story I'll share, because I do think life leaves clues, and a lot of who we're destined to be is often originates in the early phases of our life in many ways. And another way I will answer this actually happened. My mother was asking me one day, and who are these people that come to your work? Like who are they? And there was a client of mine in the room, and I was trying to explain they're business owners and they're leaders and they're people who want to go out and make a difference in the world. And she said, but what do you mean by that? And it was going nowhere. And I said, Mom, there's not one of these people typically that I wouldn't have in my own home for dinner. She goes, oh my God, isn't that great? Isn't that just wonderful? And she got it. And this man said, do you know what your son does? And she goes, not really. He goes, he sits down and he listens to people so deeply, and he can see something in them. I'm paraphrasing slightly. And he can see something in them. He guides them towards the essence of who they are or can be in the world. And my mother looked for a second, just, sure, Jesus, he's been doing that his whole life.
Wow.
Extraordinary moment. And I don't think I've ever shared that ever on a podcast. Maybe I've shared it once.
What were you feeling at that moment?
What am I feeling now? Jesus, when I think about it. I was so scared of this sense of giftedness. It felt so pure and so natural and so easy that I ran away from it. I didn't know how to harness it. I didn't know what to do with it. And it's this sense of being able to see people so deeply and not listen to them, but hear them. And when they speak, to go beyond the words they're using, to feel into the essence of what they're desperately trying to speak out into the world. It's almost listening to their soul. And I know it sounds weird, but it's true. And when I really sit with it, the truth is I've been doing that forever, because drunk men and women used to come up to me when I was a kid, and they'd sit down, they'd open up their hearts, and sober men would begrudgingly open up to me. And I was always this person that people came to. A lot of older people would come to and just open up. But do you think I listened to that? I ran so fast in the wrong direction because I wanted to run as far away from this energy, this thing, this giftedness, because I didn't know what to do with it. And I was dragged kicking and screaming to the very thing I'm here to do. Yes, there's a burden and there's a deep responsibility with it for sure, but not one that I'm not willing to take on, and not one that I'm willing to hide from. I believe to my core, if we contextualize it under entrepreneurship, but it could be any category, I believe, and there's studies around this as well, but I believe that 90% of people go to the graves with their greatest music, their greatest giftedness, their greatest artistry, their greatest writings, their greatest impact, their greatest ideas still buried inside of them. Because either one, they're afraid to bring it to the table because they're afraid to fail with the essence of who they are rather than just an idea. And I'm so grateful. There's not many things that I'm this deeply grateful for outside of my core family. But when I look back, I'm pretty hard myself, like a lot of people. I don't blow my own trumpet a lot. But the one thing I'm proud of is the people that came into my life to help me see this, and for the courage I had myself to allow it to be seen. Because if I died tomorrow morning, I don't believe that I can consciously get in touch with a single regret that I would have in my life right now.
It's incredible. And this mission that you're on to encourage others to have the same thing. It's beautiful.
Correct. Yeah.
You use the word brave. It's in your marketing. It's in your branding. It's in literally everything you do. Why brave? Brave
comes first. Always comes first. People in society today, we are applauding for people for an end result. That we give so much credence and recognition to the execution of something. You know, the Tesla, I mean, look what he did, and look at the rockets, and look at this, and look what Mother Teresa did, and look what this person did, and look what that person did. And that's wonderful. And, you know, in a lot of that praise, I think a lot of people, when they're looking at somebody that's so highly elevated in society to where they are right now, they find it hard to imagine themselves, you know, even being close to that individual and achieving even something that's remotely contained with that. A lot of people come to me and they say, I want to get clarity about some aspect of my life. And to me, the courage comes before clarity. Courage, the courage to ask yourself very simple questions is one of the most underrated things in the world. So I'll give you an example. Someone calls you next week and says, hey, Chris, I want you to help me scale my business. I've got this brand. I've watched you from afar. I love what you're doing. I love the podcast, the work you're doing. And you go, right, let's go. And we take whatever it is you're doing and we scale it, you know, and you probably wouldn't do that. You'd probably want to know why. And you know, my view is with someone like that, I would say, well, why do you want to scale it? And where are you right now? And what are you doing right now? And getting back into the essence of why someone does what they do. The very first starting point when someone comes to me is whatever it is they want to work on in life and they want to improve. I just want to know why they are the way they are today. So the courage to think differently, the courage to let go of the way things have been, the courage to imagine that who you are today is not who you can be tomorrow. Just this idea of questioning the essence of who we are is the starting point for all the clarity that we then are seeking and that is available to us. Courage always comes first, and that's why brave is just, you've got to be brave in this world, or you've got to access the bravery. And we all think, many people think that bravery is something that I don't have. It's a fleeting moment. It's something I get every now and again, like a Red Bull. It's not. It's inherently inside all of us. It's just, can we find the ways to access that? And there are certain things that promote bravery in people and other things that do not.
I've seen it so many times. Whether it's in a group or a small group, large group, is you poke the bear a bit, and it's out of, and I know, love, curiosity, and helping people get there. But how do you handle when you get that resistance and there's something behind this? Oh, I'm fine, Philip. It's a 9 out of 10. It's great there. I don't want to talk about this area. How do you keep digging on that? Because you piss people off, and it's brilliant, and I can kind of giggle because I've been on that seat, and just resisting and not wanting to get to the truth. But how do you do it?
Yeah, well, I don't anymore. I back off, and I'll tell you precisely why. I back off to an extent, and I guess there's a real life example of courage. If someone is sitting there going, "No, I love my business," and I go, "Yeah, but great, but are you sure?" And then they go, "Yeah, no, I mean, I like it. I really like it." And I just went, "You just went from love to like in 10 seconds." And then they have a choice. Do they become defiant and dig their heels in? Or do they just let go and trust that there's something in this, that my intention is pure, and that maybe they're being a little bit fast with their answers, maybe they're being a little bit defensive. The courage there is to ask a better question, is rather than being defiantly saying, no, I love what I do. Here's the difference between holding on and telling yourself a story and courage. Courage is, I really believe that to this moment. And I'm really curious to what you see that I cannot see right now. Because if there's an energy that I can't see and there's a story I'm telling myself, I want to know that. Because now I can make an adjustment in my life, and I can pivot a little bit, or I can not pivot. I can just stay exactly where I am, but with that newfound awareness. So for years, Chris, I am, and I was, and I will always be so determined to create an environment for people to see how beautiful and how brilliant and how amazingly dysfunctional they are, because we all are. And I, in my zest to get people to see that, it was my job to get people to see it. And that is not my job. My job is not to wake people up. Okay, that's not my job. I used to think that was my job. So what would happen was, number one is I would fight with people, and there'd be a confrontation of sorts, energetically, verbally, or whatever. And a lot of the time we'd break through to something really magical. So then I would justify in my mind, well, it works. But to what cost? To what cost to the person? And not even the person, because they would get to a breakthrough and they'd say, oh shit, I'm sorry for being a dick, and sorry for being resisting. And they would get the breakthrough and run off into the world, into the woods, into the ocean with this new profound idea or sense. But I would be left depleted. But the other thing is, in my zest to get people to see something with their resistance here, there'd be 5 people behind them going, I've got no resistance, I'm ready. But you're spending all this energy on this person trying to get them to see something they simply are not ready to see. That type of person is somebody that's come to us late in the day. In other words, they've chosen to continue to live a life. They've been maybe slightly out of alignment. It's compounded over a period of time. They've laid their bed and they are in denial of some of the disconnection within their life. And right now, I think we're attracting a lot more people who are just curious to make sure, hey, shit, the worst thing I can do is go to McKernan, do some work with him to find out that actually everything's awesome. I'm cool. I'm amazing. Now, that's never happened, by the way, just to be clear, ever,
that's right.
ever in the history of all the work we've ever done.
I believe it.
But what if they just discover one thing out of the work? They discover one area that actually, if I keep doing this, it's going to compound into something that perhaps could be a lot messier in the future. So therefore, I think because of our messaging, because of my energy, I'm sitting back a little bit. I'm allowing people to come. I think there's people who are coming generally speaking, don't want to fight. They want to lean in and they want to know, and they trust that I'm coming at it from the right place, and that they're ready and they've got that courage, and they're more open than perhaps clients had been in the past.
Yeah, and I've seen again in many cases where the courage that happens in these group settings, which you do a lot of the work there, and the vulnerability, and all of a sudden you watch 6, 7 people do that, and that just creates this beautiful spot to go like, well, fuck, I'm already here. Yeah, I might as well be real with myself and McKernan.
Yeah, well, let me share one thing that I was very proud of, and I meant it. I've said aspects of this before, but this time I said it, and it was very profound for me in the room, personally and selfishly. So we run an event in Ireland, and at the very opening day, I had a lady sitting to my right called Ms. or Marie, and she was there to support and to help hold the space for this group of amazing men and women from all over the world. And I basically opened up by going, some of you are still under the illusion and you've come all this way thinking, I've got the answers and I'm going to help you get the answers that you personally don't have. And I can't tell you how wrong that is. The greatest insights you're going to get from the next 6 days, is going to come from you. The second person is going to come from is somebody sitting next to you that you probably don't even know right now. They're going to say something that's going to blow you open or help you access something that's been dormant inside of you for a long time. The third person or third element or energy is going to be nature and this beautiful landscape that we surround ourselves. There's a reason we do it in Ireland in this location as opposed to a hotel in downtown Boston. So nature and the energy in the land and the music and the storytellers and all these beautiful people we bring in, they're going to unlock something inside of you that's ready to come out. And if it's not them, then it's going to be Ms. or Marie who's sitting to my right. She's going to say something that's going to blow you open. And on the rare occasion I say something that assists you, I can assure you that it has come from either you yourself, me reflecting it back to you, someone else in the room that I've overheard or I've interacted with, or something Ms. has fed back to me, or my relationship with the landscape that's in Ireland. And if it doesn't come from one of those sources, there's only one other place it comes from, and that is through me. It's not from or of me. And it's the first time I entered an experience ever. I've longed to feel this, even though I didn't know what it felt like. But I knew there was a way in which I could show up as a vessel, completely ego-free. And that was the first time in my life I've been able to get there. And it was probably because I wasn't trying to get there. And I sat just around the corner from where I'm sitting right now. And I'd never felt such peace and such pressure off my shoulders. And I knew in that moment this was going to be a week that would be indescribable after the week. And that's precisely what it was. It was pure fucking magic. And I say it, not me. It was magical.
You beat me to it because Ireland was I've probably told no less than 300 people about my experience there. So post Mexico, I got to hang out with this McKernan guy more. And this was probably maybe 5 years into Brave Soul. This is 2016 still. But it was classic your style. It's like, well, come to Ireland. We'll pick you up in Dublin on Saturday, and then we'll drop you back off on the following Saturday. I mean, some simple rules as far as we recommend, please don't bring your phone, or if you have it, don't turn it on. Don't bring a laptop or a camera, and you'll be fine. We'll take good care of you. We'll feed you. We'll house you. And there was nothing else other than stories through some other, colleagues or friends or people that I had heard of this Brave Soul retreat. And I totally surrendered to, like, I need this more than ever. I have no fucking clue what I'm getting myself into. And I'll never forget it. And getting to Dublin, like literally being almost homesick. I'd never been to Europe before. I'm like, this is, weird little hotel rooms. And, I met some great people the night before, but we get picked up and it's a 3-hour coach ride to, the far coast of Ireland. And this whole experience you created, I mean, the community, there was, I think 21 or 22 in our group, and, 3 to a room in these thatch roof cottages. And the experience was absolutely incredible. And I know that was so much of it because it was utilizing the landscape. One of my favorite memories was we get on the bus one morning and you hand everyone on iPod shuffle. And you've got 30 minutes to say whatever you're going to say. And we bus us up to this, the bottom of this beautiful mountain. And we hiked for probably, 4 or 5 hours. You play the iPod shuffle. It's preloaded with the most beautiful music that I still have the playlist that I created and ripped off from it on Spotify. But it just, when I play that, it takes me back to the moment. And the instructions were, you don't talk to anyone. So we're seeing, it's animals, it's nature. You're in your head, but it forced, like, you created this beautiful experience for people to quiet their mind, go in, go deep. In the group settings, it was an hour of a discussion, and you'd give us 3 questions and say, come back in 4 hours. And that was just foreign. Like, not having a phone and being connected to my company and the people and being this person that I thought I needed to be every day. But I think by the third or fourth day, you start to really get used to it. And the experience was absolutely magical. And I can tell you, to this day, it changed my life forever. And I know that's been the case for so many people. And when I get people and I hear they're going for the first time, I'm just like, I get so excited for them. But the other side of that was going back. I was so afraid to turn my phone on that day 8. A few of us sitting around the airport and everyone gets on their phone. I'm like, holy shit, like I am terrified of going back because this was so beautiful. It was what I needed in life. Tell me about the retreat. How has that evolved over the years? And now how do you get into that? Because there's a little bit of a vetting process to get into this retreat.
Yeah, it's funny on the technology. Nowadays, what we do is it's still invitational. But what we do is we actually have a box on day 1, and we encourage people to put their phone into it, even the one that's the second phone hidden in their sock that they think no one knows about.
That's right.
And what's so fascinating is we've just started doing that over the last 2 or 3 years, and some people hand it in. The next phase we have 2 days later, people are coming to us, is it too late to hand my phone in? And there's another wave of people. Now we've reduced the numbers on Brave Soul, which is a small, idea, but ultimately there's a whole purpose behind it. But I digress a little bit. And the people that handed in phase 2 are witnessing and hearing back how people are feeling being untethered from technology. Now, if there's an emergency or whatever, which has never happened, touch wood, they can contact us and they can get to the person. All that's covered. Sure. And then the other thing that's fascinating, just very quickly, at the end of the week, we have all these iPhones and we have Galaxies or whatever the hell is in there, typically iPhones. We have to take the box and we have to chase people down to take their phones back.
They're literally running away. Get that damn thing
and
away.
The reluctance, other than people saying, I want to connect my kids, and they feel guilty for not wanting the phone, the reluctance to take this piece of technology because it represents so much pressure. It's so beautifully, simply designed, but yet the complexities that it comes with. It's a representation often of a very complex life that someone has waiting for them at home. And one of the things that we do in Ireland in the week is to help people understand the difference between simplicity and complexity. And that a lot of the complexity that we create. And that we're creating it because we're disconnected. We're creating it because we're trying to hide. We're creating it so we don't have to live a simple life. And at the end of the day, I think every single one of us on this earth want to live a radically simple life. And yet we often do the opposite, and we create the opposite. We justify it and so on and so forth. But the work came about really simply because honestly, it's and it sounds really selfish, but either I don't believe in going out into the world and surveying, saying, what do you want? And then going and creating it. I appreciate there are companies and organizations and markets that's how they survive and that's how they thrive and that works. But I don't believe people know what's best for them most of the time, particularly in personal relationships with self and others, and alignment in terms of work that's very meaningful and a reflection of who we are in the world. So therefore, I built at the beginning a retreat that I felt is the very retreat that I wish I had had 25 years prior. The work that I wish I had done so desperately and so deeply. And that was the basis for it. What if I could create a retreat that I could have gone on 25 years ago? What would I do and where would I do it? And that was the beginning of the experience, to try to create the space that I felt I needed, not wanted. I wanted lots of other things. I wanted this, that, and the other, and whatever. But what I needed was a very different dialogue. And that was the beginning. And it has emerged and it has adapted. And there's quite a structure on it, despite the landing in Dublin Airport and not knowing what's happening for the week. There's a very structured frame. But what I've done is given myself freedom, and this is called courage. I can create endless amounts of content. Content has never been my problem. I am so creative. But where courage comes in is when you can have a container and you have a framework, but that you create space to allow the group to decide where the group and the conversation needs to go. That's uncertainty. That sometimes makes me look like I don't know what the fuck I'm doing in a moment or whatever. But if I'm there to truly serve the people, if I'm there to serve the people that have come from all over the world, from down the road, I got Irish people coming, I have psychologists and psychiatrists and business owners and visionaries and people who are visionaries but don't believe in their visions and so on, and all sorts of people. If I really want to serve them, I provide the environment that they need, not want. And I also create the space for the conversations that will come up through the experience that they need to have and want to have desperately. So it's a combination of both. And it is a magical experience, not because of me, but because of the people that come and the environment in which we do it. And yes, I play a role in that, and I play a significant role in it, but it's a special thing.
Yeah, it was, again, something I'll never forget forever, and you can take a little bit of credit for that.
I will.
You have used the term, I would say many times, or I've heard it come up, is gifts versus talents. What does that mean?
Yeah, I think, I would say that a lot of people operate in this world. If I can try just kind of step back a little bit, I think the greatest pandemic that humanity is facing right now is a severing of connection within themselves. And a lot of us are operating up here. We're operating in a very intellectual place. And everything that we do in Ireland, as an example, the music, the iPod, the nature, everything that we do is designed to do one thing ultimately, and that is to drop out of your head into your body to connect with your soul, essentially. Okay, even your heart. We'll take that. I'll take that. And the brain and the mind is so powerful. But when we're busy, we're up here and we're second guessing and we're ducking and diving and making decisions. And in business, it's wonderful. When it comes to personal relationships, a lot of leaders and entrepreneurs struggle in that area because they try to apply the same methodology that they would in a business to a personal relationship, and it doesn't work out. So for me, we all have these gifts inside of us, or maybe it might be a singular gift that is often, in some cases, never addressed, never touched. And that we'll operate and we'll move through this world executing our intellect and our talents, the things that we're naturally good at, and be societally applauded for it and recognized and paid for it. But we often sometimes ignore the gifts that we have. And those gifts can be musical, those gifts can be artistic, those gifts can be, very much in the space of artistry. In fact, it's always in the space of artistry in one form or another. But these gifts are sometimes an ability to move the needle for others, to hold space, to sit in front of people, to see into their soul, to be with them, to be present with them. And these gifts are often a direct correlation between the things that we didn't have when we were younger and the things that we wished we had, the vacancies that we had in our origin story. And these are the things that often come back into our lives later on. But because we have some pain associated with it. So if I can give you a real life example, nowhere on my website is this written. And people might say, well, how would you distill what you do? To me, a lot of my work is around alignment, helping people align to all the key areas in their life so they can live a fulfilled life. And they can go to their grave many, many, many years from now with not a single goddamn regret in their body. That to me is pretty cool. Before that, people say, well, okay, how do you do that? Well, it's all about connection, or a lack of connection. It's connecting to ourselves, deep relationship with ourselves, connecting to our loved ones and going deeper than we can imagine, and connecting to meaningful work that lights us and the world up. Great. What's before that? Why is connection so important to you, Philip? Well, it's actually all about loneliness. Really what Philip McKernan is ultimately about is I want to eradicate loneliness for as many people as I can before I die. Why would that be the case? Why would a guy who's 52, who looks 42, I hope you think, I really don't care actually, walking around this earth, give a shit about loneliness? Is because when I was a child, I was lonely. And loneliness is one of those things that I don't think anyone should ever have to feel. And you can be on your own and not be lonely. You can be surrounded by hundreds of thousands of people and be one of the loneliest guys and girls at the party.
Just thinking that the people that you might think would be the polar opposite of lonely might be the loneliest individuals inside.
Some of the most public figures that I work with, and I work with them, and I choose not to share many of the people I work with, the loneliness that they feel, the isolation that is both self-isolated that they've created and societally isolated, because in society they have to be a certain thing and they don't know how to operate between those two kind of polarizing positions. So to me, there's this great opportunity. The gift is often lies in the discomfort or the pains and the disconnections we had earlier in life. But it doesn't mean I have to create a dating app. It doesn't mean that I have to go and make this my life's vocation. What I ask people to consider is, can they at least experiment and play with this aspect of their life? Can they move the needle for one person at least in the realm of the very thing they themselves struggled with? So if I struggled with confidence, shit, I've made a couple of $100,000, or I'm making a couple of $100,000, or I've made my first 50K, or I've built my business, or I've sold my business. What if I could send, the elevator? What if I could send the elevator back down? Who would I like to get in the elevator, and who would I like to arrive at my penthouse so they can come in and I can help them with the very things that I myself? What's the retreat that I would have built, or I would build, that I wish I'd went to 20 years or 25 years ago? Because I think there's a moral responsibility to do that. And I think there's an innate selfishness if we don't. We don't have to do it at scale. But if you can do it for one other person, I believe that's our part of our responsibility. And I'm going to share one last thing on this. And this is difficult to get across, but if I can get this across, this is at the crux of it all. We often hear this idea of healing. And every single one of us have been traumatized. And I think that's an interesting thing, that some people don't think they've been traumatized. And it's not that they're stupid or they can't see it. They just haven't been able to see it in a way that they've been able to contextualize it as trauma. We've all had trauma. You hug your children too much.
Or they think it needs to be something a lot bigger than perhaps.
Or they need to be societally. It's not the top 5 in society, so therefore it's not big enough. Hug your children too much, they're going to need therapy. Don't hug them at all, they're going to need therapy. No matter what
you're going to screw them up, no matter what.
You're going to screw them up, exactly. And, it's what's interesting is that people often say, well, I've done a lot of work on myself, but I still feel that this thing is nagging at me. This trauma or this sense of loneliness or whatever it is. I said, number one, it's never going to go away. It's not meant to go away. It's meant to drive you. It's meant to be the thing that reminds you of how fragile you are and how brilliant and capable you are to move you forward. But there's something that people miss in this healing journey. And I need to do this in a graph because I have it all in my head and I've written it out, but I've never put it in an actual, because I think it's brilliant. And it's the journey of healing and the resistance that we feel as we go through this circular journey. But as people have done all the different therapeutic modalities, have come to me and they've sat and they said, but there's still something missing. The thing that's missing, as long as you've gone through all of the phases of healing, the thing that's missing is, imagine you're starting sitting on a chair here and you go off on this journey of resistance and exploration and breakthroughs and crying and anger and back, and you start again and you go back and you finally get to this place. People go, well, I'm here. I feel I've done all the healing I can, but I still feel off. What's the problem? You're sitting right next to the solution, and your greatest gift lies right next to your deepest pain. It's the chair that's been sitting next to you the entire time. And the invitation is to simply step over the threshold to the place where you go and help other people heal. The final step in healing, and I've never said this out loud, the final step in healing is helping other people heal. That's it. It is the final step. And if you don't do that, you're depriving yourself of healing. If you don't do that, you're depriving the world of the giftedness that you inherently have inside you. That's what you do. You hide that from you. Do you think I want to be a speaker? Do you think I want to be on a podcast? No disrespect. Do you think I signed up for this shit? No, I didn't. Of course I did, but this is not what I was meant to do. I was the kid in school with his head down. I was never going to be seen by anybody. My declaration to myself is, no one is ever going to humiliate me again, because I know what it feels like to be humiliated at such a deep level. How do you make sure that doesn't happen? Is you don't put your head above water. You hide in the dark corners. I am here because I'm on a mission to help other people. It's not because I want to be seen or ego or anything like that. It used to be, I think, a lot more, but not anymore. It's helping other people heal. And then people say, but I haven't got the qualifications. Bullshit. You haven't got the qualifications. If you've lived through that, you're more qualified than any person that has a letter after their name.
Yeah, that experience piece, I mean, it's one of our best teachers, right? And it's so damn simple what you just said, yet so difficult for many people to get to, realizing like the and I immediately went to like the gift you get when you help someone else. That is that piece that just it nothing else can trump it.
Sorry, Chris, I know you want to move on,
No,
but I'm sorry,
no.
but I was going through a funky phase over the last week, and little doubts creeping in and whatever. And I got an email yesterday from somebody, and it was an email with a video, and it was this man reaching out to me, and he'd stepped away from my work recently. And I was not annoyed, I was upset by it because I could see the potential in him. And he was scared, and he kind of bolted a little bit. But he sent me this amazing video, and it arrived in my inbox. I think was it yesterday? It arrived yesterday. I watched it this morning, and this morning I sat in my living room looking out the ocean with tears rolling down my face. And I don't think there's a number in my bank account that could have allowed me to access that type of gratitude and sense of humanity than that video message this morning that I watched at whatever time of the morning. It was absolutely extraordinary.
For those that feel like they need to have maybe not even a title, but the opportunity, or I need all these things to get before I can feel confident enough to go do that. And I'm speaking because I'm coming from past situations in life of, well, I am not, who am I to be able to give that person or teach them? Where do you start?
Well, I think what you do is you manage the expectations, because you use the word teach. Now, teach has an energy behind it. You're teaching, you've got to be an expert in an area. If you're teaching somebody, you're imparting information in a way that's going to be absorbed in a particular way. If I was encouraging somebody who is resonating at some level with this message or this conversation, I would ask them to show and not teach anybody anything. Show, don't tell, because teaching can be telling in a way. It can be also very invitational. But if you think about it, like, so, okay, you've been through something, and you've suffered in some way. So to go ahead and teach somebody, it's a lot of pressure, and it conjures up things like workbooks and podcasts and all sorts of stuff. And by the way, I don't want to come across as being curriculum irresponsible, that anyone who's done anything can teach somebody in the other thing. If you were an alcoholic, you can help people with alcoholism. You can. But you've got to be obviously responsible in how you might go about doing it. And what I would encourage people to do is to simply share. There's two things that I think we absolutely grossly misunderstand in this world. The power of our sharing, particularly as parents. Think about the amount of shit that we do as mums and dads. The stuff that we've regretted, the things we said or did when we were drunk, as an example. And then we deprive our children of those misdemeanors. We don't share it with our kids. We act as if we live the perfect life because we don't want the kids to be exposed to that. And the kids grow up in this world where they look at their mom and dad, and their mom and dad it's not what they're saying, it's what they're not saying. Their mom and dad are basically implying that they're kind of perfect when they're not. I think when you show your kids how dysfunctional you are within reason, then their dysfunction becomes not normal, but acceptable, because they do have dysfunction. And I wrote a book years ago, I think it might be behind me, it doesn't really matter, but called One Last Talk. And the whole idea behind One Last Talk is to simply share a part of your personal narrative that perhaps you're not that proud of, perhaps you're a bit embarrassed about it, perhaps you never thought you would share. And it is so valuable. It is like 3 years of therapy wrapped into one experience. And when people share their story, two things happen. They feel that there's something deeply cathartic that has just happened. There's a movement, a letting go that they just didn't even see. And secondly is, if it's in an audience or if it's online or if it's in front of people, someone comes up and goes, oh my God. They may not use this language, but essentially you've just basically put words and language to the thing that I have felt. You've shared my story. Your story is so beautiful. And what you've done is given me permission to see that my dysfunctional story can also be beautiful. Because if your story matters, then my story has to matter. And therefore I matter. So that's one. Share parts of your story without the need to teach. It is that powerful. And the second thing is the value of holding space for another human being. You may not even have to open your mouth, but if you can share a story and just hold space, or you can just hold space for someone. When I was a young kid, I wasn't advising people what to do, but they were coming to me, and I became an extraordinary hearer, not a listener. I became an extraordinary hearer My wife says to me, your greatest gift is your ability to deeply, deeply listen, and therefore to hear people at a level that ordinarily isn't available to them in society.
It's beautiful.
Everybody can do those two, Chris. Not everyone needs to teach straight away. That's what I would offer them.
And creating that space, again, I go back to that is the, you know, the conversation that it could be 30 minutes, but a safe space, some vulnerability, and open ears.
Yeah.
Another thing I go back to, you know, the retreat and time with you even before that, but you've had many questions that you'll ask around, like, what conversations do you need to have? And it was funny when you talked about parents, it really hit home, because one of the things you said, like, Chris, tell me about life growing up. And I was, you know, my parents had a perfect relationship, this. And you kind of got asking some more questions, and it just opened up this beautiful experience where, you know, in a family household for many reasons of maybe not talking about everything or talking about some difficult conversations. You know, my parents losing a 3-year-old, you know, in between my sister and brother. You can only imagine the trauma and what they had to go through, and why maybe they didn't want to talk about some of those things. But, you know, you encouraged me to just lean in and ask some different questions. And a couple of things that come to mind is, you know, I reached out to my dad. I said, Dad, we're going to go. He's into old cars and tractors. I said, we're going to go to Connecticut to the Barrett-Jackson. And I think he was dead in his tracks, because I'm like, we're going to come to my place. We're going to drive for a full day. We're going to stay overnight a couple of nights. And we had never spent that time together, because he was working. He was busy. He was on the farm. And I think we were both wildly uncomfortable getting in the truck, you know, driving down. But that experience just, you know, I challenged myself to ask more and learn more and be curious. And our relationship changed from that day forward. And another one was just, you know, back home with my mom is saying, hey, let's go for dinner. And it was just something that, you know, I find that when I go home, I get into these patterns and I show up a certain way that's still, you know, Chris the son when I get home. And we had dinner, and I asked her, like, what was it like growing up? What was it like in our marriage? And she's like, holy shit, you know, your father and I'm surprised we stayed together. I didn't want to be on a farm. I thought we'd move into town, you know, this, and just open up all these things. And I just, like, it was so beautiful, because I'm like, oh shit, like, here I am thinking one thing, and they're just, you know, beautiful people with challenges like the rest of us in the world. And so again, it started with, you know, what are some conversations, or how do you change the conversation, or what conversations do you need to have in your life to change things?
Yeah. I think particularly in relationships, everything we want in a particular relationship lies just beyond a conversation we're unwilling to have, unwilling to have. And I think the power of conversation is so key. I remember going to my parents-in-law's house, and I remember one day asking my wife, so your dad, you know, where did he grow up, and what did he, you know, where did he go to school and whatever? She says, oh, I don't know. And I said, what do you mean you don't know? He's your dad. And she goes, well, he doesn't want to talk about his past. And I said, he's told you that? Like, he's literally said to you, I do not want to talk about my past. And she goes, well, no, he's never said it. But I mean, it's just, he doesn't go there. And there's 7 siblings in the place like a zoo, and it's noisy and whatever. And one day we're sitting there, and I said, Willie, he said, yeah. And I said, where do you go to school? And he said, oh, just down the road. And I said, do you like school? And then I just shut my mouth. And the next minute, and they're copiously moving and jumping up for tea and grabbing the phone or whatever. And everyone just sat on the edge of their seats or in their chairs or whatever. And he talked nonstop for about 30 to 40 minutes. And no one moved. And he kept talking and talking and talking and talking. No one had ever asked him.
And the assumption was made that he didn't want to talk about it.
Yeah. And in his mind, as we go through a phase of parenting, we tell ourselves a story. Well, my shit doesn't matter. My insignificant life, my little nuanced stories don't really matter. It's about the kids. It's about this. And no one asked him. See, then that was validated. I said, well, I don't think it matters. And obviously no one else does, because no one asked me about it. So this little mini circle. And I quote, my wife said, I learned more about my dad that night than I had in the previous 5-10 years. That was from my
incredible.
wife.
From one question.
One question. And I don't think it's just the question. I think questions hold the key to unlocking lots of stuff within ourselves and around us. I think a great question, a wonderful question, can really move the needle and help us access things that are inaccessible. But I think what makes a great question is not just the space and the time and all those, it's the intentionality, the purity, the pure intent that sits right behind the question. Are you asking a question because you're killing time? Are you asking a question because you're nosy? Are you asking a question because you think, oh shit, I better ask him a question because he's asked me 5 in a row. I better throw him one back.
Yeah.
Are you truly, not even interested, you truly want to know the man or the woman sitting in front of you? And I think intentionality with a beautifully simple, thought out question can be also very disarming for somebody in a healthy way. And I think it was a question with genuine interest in who this man is. And of course, we got gold out of it.
It's beautiful. My assumption is that this is oftentimes a generational thing, or maybe that's an excuse, but that, you know, there were generations before us that were told to maybe not speak about these things. And again, I'll never forget my mother telling me that when her dad died at 16, she was told, you know, we don't cry and we don't talk about this. And you can imagine the impact of that one thing said, how that changes someone's life and how they show up and how they do that. So it's, you know, I think personally, the world has moved to a more vulnerable place, and, you know, more courage, and it's just, there's this greater acceptance to share, to be open. We're not perfect, but I think it's come a long way, especially in the last decade. Agreed. I want to talk about your family. I had the opportunity to meet Charlie in person in Toronto, and I loved it. A couple things really stood out. One, I felt like I knew him because you talked about him, and we've had lots of time together, but not that much compared to maybe others. And I think because you bring your stories and your family into your coaching, you show them on social media. Like, I really felt like I knew Charlie. And holy shit, he's like, you know, taller than I am now. But how old is he? He's 13? 15. Or sorry, 15. So you bring him to Toronto.
And Maggie's 13, yeah.
Yeah, and Maggie's 13. Okay, so you bring him to Toronto, and you basically call up one of your friends and say, hey, you know, you've got a business. Can you do something with my son for the day? And he's like, perfect. Yeah, we'll bring him in. We'll give him this great experience. But my point, and I think something that really resonated with me that's beautiful, is that you've integrated your family into your life. And I use the quote, you know, behind every man, there's a much smarter, much more good-looking, you know, brilliant woman. In your case, it's Pauline. 100%. But I really appreciate how much you've integrated your family into your business. And I think it just sets a beautiful example for what others can do. And I'm learning more of that now with 2 younger boys, to say, it doesn't have to be this or that. If I choose to go here for a trip, I'm going to bring them along, or they're going to come a couple days later. And I've got some great support through that recently with the mastermind group. Tell me about that and how intentional it was for you.
Yeah, it felt so natural, more so that for me than it did for probably Pauline to some extent. And I guess for me, there's not business and life. There's just me. There's just my life, and my life is my business, my life, and who I am on stage and who I am in a room is essentially who I am at home. Now, I don't mean sitting around asking questions and, you know, going one-to-one with people. And even though on occasion I will be direct with my wife and I'll share something, or I'll, you know, challenge, and I see things and she knows now. There used to be a defensive mechanism there, but it's fallen away to some extent, and she just trusts that I have a gift, and why not honor it rather than defend it. And then with the children, it's quite extraordinary. Last year I was invited to do a retreat actually in Mexico as well, with a group of people, and I asked Charlie, did he want to come? And I was doing a little mini speaking event thing, and I did a talk and did another talk, and then we did this immersive retreat. And I just trusted that he was meant to be on the trip. And then we got closer to it. I said, we have to talk about what you're going to do during the couple of days that I'm actually delivering. And he goes, well, what are you thinking? And I said, well, I want to know what you want to do. And I said, well, here's kind of your options. One is you don't go at all. 2 is we go and we figure out you going somewhere, trying to do something, whether it's a work experience, whatever. 3 is you sit in the room and you participate. And he goes, what do you mean participate? I said, well, you're not going to sit in the room and observe people sharing parts of their lives and everything else. I think if you're there, you've got to step in. But I said, it's entirely your choice, and do it in your own way and do it at your own pace. And no one's going to expect anything from you over and above what you feel capable of doing in that moment. Oh my God, Chris, I'll just share one exercise. I felt really compelled in the moment. These men and women knew each other. And I just felt really compelled in a moment to ask each of them to write a letter to one other person in the room, as an example. And we had spent a day in an orphanage, and we had spent, a day before, and then the kind of beginning to move towards the end of this day. And I did not shift anything because Charlie was in the room. I spoke fluently. I spoke clearly about what I believe. I didn't mix it up. I didn't hold back. I didn't hide F-bombs. I didn't hide vulnerable stories about me. I shared it all. There was no difference. And when I asked him to do the letter, I said, because Charlie is similar to me academically, dyslexic, struggles with writing. And then I went, shit, I never even thought about Charlie. And I felt myself as the dad going to say, you okay, buddy? You okay? And I said,
you good?
I said, no, leave him. He's good. And I could see him writing away and thinking and writing away and writing away. And then I broke all these people into twos. And I split Charlie up with this young man. And Charlie had to sit there and listen to a letter from this man who spoke about Charlie. He said, you're one of the most extraordinary humans I've ever met. I've seen you with your dad. I've seen you with everyone. He said, I wish I was as vibrant and as confident, as sensitive as you were when I was 15, and my son is getting teary. And then my son had to read a letter back to this man. But I said, don't write a letter unless it's sincere. But to watch my son craft language of sincerity towards another human and to participate, he was the living, breathing example of pure courage those 2 days. I remember watching him in awe and just going, look at this man. Look what he is capable of doing at 15 years old. And I said to him, we'd meet and we'd say, how was that? He goes, yeah, that was really good, Dad. And yeah, your man sharing that was, I said, are you okay? I was checking in with them. And I said, would you do it again? He goes, yeah, in a heartbeat.
It's incredible. What a gift to give him the space and give him the options too. But I think a compliment to you and to your family and to Charlie and creating that space.
We underestimate the capacity of our children, I believe. And I say we, I'm not telling people, I'm inviting people to consider this. I've done this in the past. We underestimate their capacity emotionally, physically, mentally to absorb certain things. And yet we need to protect them, of course. But I think they're well capable of way more than we can sometimes imagine. And, is he the perfect rounded young man at 15? No, he's got his stuff going on like everybody does. And we try to create an environment where perfection is not the outcome that we're looking for. We're just looking for sincerity and sensitivity and care for humanity. And other than that, and self-care, other than that, we hope we're doing a half decent job some of the time.
We're trying. How did having kids change you as a leader?
I struggled with the idea of having kids, and I remember telling myself the bullshit story that it was about freedom and financial pressures and everything else. Ultimately, I didn't think I could parent, and I didn't think I was capable of parenting, and I didn't think I could parent in an effective way. So what it did was it shattered my expectations of what parenting was going to be and had to be. It brought failure very close to home. So when I fail as a parent, I can't hide from it. I'm very good at justifying failures in other aspects of my life. When I fail as a parent, there is no hiding from it. It is just in your face. So it humanizes me. It is definitely an ego reducer. It's definitely shaped me in that regard. And it's also shown me how deeply this depth of capacity for love that I'm not even sure what I knew what love was until children came along. No disrespect to my wife. I loved my wife. I love my wife. I think she's amazing. I'm actually more in love with my wife in recent years than I've ever been, which is kind of a good thing, I reckon.
That's a great thing.
And she's pretty cool, but yet not many people know her, and she has her stuff going on that she's not a good friend, and why would people be her friends? And she struggles with friendship in a big way, which is unfortunate, but that's her story and that's her path. But I think if ultimately I just distill it down to one thing is just the capacity to love. That's just what parenting has brought into my life, just this overwhelming love that just permeates every part of my body, and I just didn't even think that was possible.
Yeah, so true. It's the one thing you're most excited about when you think a year, 3 years, 10 years ahead.
I want to bring young people. I want to bring the 15, the 14-year-old person that I was, and I want to be able to bring them into environments to help them connect with themselves and to understand themselves in a very complex society. And in addition to that, or linking onto that, I want to bring a group of parents away with their children to help them connect. And I've been asked, clients of mine have been asking me to do that for years and years and years, and I've stayed away from it. And I'm ready to step into that in probably 2025, 26, and I have a plan for that. So there are two things that are on the horizon, and I'm very excited about it.
It's beautiful. I look forward to it. Keep me on that list, please.
I will.
I'll ask one final question because you've asked this many times, but name one area where you're playing small in life.
Yeah, I think I got to go right now. I think I've got a hair appointment, or you're breaking up.
Wow.
Just one?
Any? Maybe the one that resonates the most. I'm not. I think it is playing small. It is in writing. I've been telling myself a narrative. I think my narrative is that I can't write, or writing is a block for me. And I have a fairly decent story to back it up, as we often do. But I remember anything I handed in to any teacher was either X'd. They got to a point where they wouldn't even mark it. They didn't write shit on it, but they more or less would just throw it back at me. So this idea that anything I put out into the world in written format was instantly rejected. My wife has more degrees than I have, I don't know, cars or chairs or whatever analogy, or toes, not quite toes, but, and she says, she comes to me if she wants to write something with genuine sincerity and meaning. And it's a story I'm telling myself, but I think I'm playing smaller. I want to write. I think it's a real yearning for me, and I'm hiding from it. I appreciate you sharing that.
Absolutely.
Philip, I could ask you questions and all day long. I appreciate wholeheartedly the time. I love you as a person. I appreciate you in my life, and thanks for making the time today.
Oh my God, I was so excited. The only thing better than this would be you and I doing this face to face someday, and I'm sure that's going to be on the horizon at some point in the future. But I was so excited about this, and I was meant to go to Dublin today, and I just said no. Chris is in there. I'm not moving this. I'm here at the castle, the studio next door, and it's a privilege. I've watched you. I've been fortunate to share some of your journey. I think you're one of the most beautiful, sensitive. Thing I love about you is you've got the ability as a man, and it sounds very sexist, to be able to navigate this incredible intellect and smarts that you have in business, and also allow yourself to be emotional and to feel into the essence of what it means to be human. And not many men can oscillate and move between both of those phases in their life, and for that I'm deeply grateful. I'm grateful that you trust me, and I'm grateful that you trust me with your audience. That means the world to me, so thank you.
What a pleasure. Okay, well, have a great day, and we'll talk soon. Thanks, Philip.